views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups.
Good evening, I'm Eric Hackley, and this is HackonomicsTV. I'm back after a 2-year absence from a 30-year run of producing and hosting live call-in talk shows on Fort Wayne, Indiana, public access television. The reason you haven't been seeing me or hearing from me is I was kicked out of studios and kicked off the air. This next episode will feature a gentleman from Jamaica, Pastor Donovan Coley. Pastor Coley shared with me his role as CEO of the Fort Wayne Rescue Mission, but most importantly, he talked to me a lot about Jamaican history and how that helped the Jamaican psyche avoid slave mentality. So stay tuned. Donovan Coley. All right, Pastor Coley, let me ask you a question here. Now, you're not an original American citizen. You're from Jamaica. And my question is, Jamaica was colonized by the Spanish and by the British. How did the natives avoid any type of a slave mentality due to the influences of two other cultures? And if there was a type slave mentality, how did you evolve past that?
Well, you know, as historians will tell us that Jamaica was discovered by Christopher Columbus in 1494. And as a result of that, you know, individuals saw us as a great place for individuals from Europe to come and plunder and to take our resources. And so we had the Arawak Indians, we had the Carib Indians. And so as there was just great fight between the natives as well as the Spanish, it got to a point where the rest of the world also saw Jamaica and the West Indies as a place where they could also plunder. And so as the Spaniards, as we call them, as the Spanish economy grew, so the interest in the Europeans. And so by that time we had individuals like Sir Francis Drake, we had Oliver Cromwell. And so by 1655, the British literally toppled over the Spanish. At that particular time, the Spaniards had established Spanish Town, which is a small city outside of Kingston. And so that became the first capital. So it was Spanish Town. In fact, there are still buildings that somehow represent the Spanish conquest, if you will. But in 1655, when the British came, they literally moved the capital from Spanish Town to Kingstown. But instead of calling it Kingstown, they called it Kingston. There was a lot of upheaval, you know. So by 1655, as you know, we also, you know, later on they introduced, you know, bringing in slaves, etc. Jamaica has always been a country where the natives were very resilient. And so we have many, many national heroes. In fact, there was a woman by the name of Nanny who literally led a revolt. We had an individual by the name of Sam Sharp who also led a revolt.
Against who?
Against the British. Because Jamaicans have this incredible spirit of independence and self-determination. And so even coming from our African ancestors, these individuals knew that if you have one nation or one group of people literally colonizing and dominating them, then you will crush their spirit. And so even as you think about Jamaica today, but we're not going there yet, you'll notice that they have this fighting spirit. And so they tend to rise up out of the many nations in the world. And so you had a Nanny, and you had Sam Sharp and others. Later on we had Marcus Garvey. And so that spirit of independence has always consumed the Jamaican mindset. And so over time, we have literally decided that we are going to determine our fate as a people.
But usually that type of a spirit is no match for the European power, because European powers have always figured out a way to divide and conquer. So why didn't that work amongst the Jamaicans?
You see, there's an old saying that says might is right. And so there are individuals who thought that the power was in the cannons, the power was in the gun, in the gunpowder, etc. But Jamaicans not only have the ability to fight physically, but also to fight mentally. And so they were very good at organizing themselves in tribes. In fact, even today in Jamaica, we have a tribe. It is called the Maroons. And they actually have their own king. And so these individuals went ahead and declared their own independence many, many years ago. And so Jamaicans have a way of fighting not just physically, but literally outsmarting the folks. One of the first things that they did was they created their own language. And so we came up with what was called patois. And what we did was they learned English, if you will, but then they added many different strains, whether it is Spanish or French with a little bit of French influence, or Portuguese, and we were able to come up with our own language so as to outsmart the folks. So we could be talking about the European and the European not knowing exactly what we're saying, and at the same time we were smart enough to also speak the English language, if you will. And so Jamaicans developed that kind of an approach to the way we were going to do it. Education from way back then was also one of the key factors in causing us not to take second place to the Europeans. And so from way back when, the churches, especially the Moravian church or the Baptist church, when they sent missionaries to us, there were Jamaicans who literally gleaned and learned and educated themselves to the point that we even had Jamaicans who became missionaries to the other West Indian islands as well. So I would say we outsmarted the Europeans, at least from a mental perspective, and then we also used education as a tool.
Who originally had this idea? Because normally when an invading group comes in, you don't have a chance to sit back and make plans. And even when you do have a chance to make plans, the secret gets leaked out to where the other side knows what you're doing. How were they able to keep that only known amongst themselves?
Most of the meetings were held later on in the evenings. And so similar to the American story, you know, when you have secret meetings, if you will, Jamaicans were very good at doing that. They also were able to have many of their meetings in churches. And so the Moravian church provided a platform. The Baptist church provided a platform. And so the Jamaicans were so ingenious. And so they literally were able to gather the key leaders in the community. And they were able to devise their strategies. And as they became a part of the church, they developed a strategy first and foremost in terms of education. So they started what was called basic schools.